I want to encourage you today that the place of discovery is among God's people. The place of discovery is among God's people. You don't discover your gifts when you're disconnected from God's people. That's just the way that it is. Some of us are hanging on the fringe. We're not really connected to anybody in the church, and we're wondering what our gifts are. Well, you know what? You have made it nearly impossible for yourself to discover your spiritual gift, because God uses the community of his people to reveal to you how he's gifted you. Sometimes it's a leader. You know, as you're locked into the church, as you're building relationships, sometimes our leaders are trained to observe the congregation and to recognize how people are gifted, what their proclivities, their spiritual proclivities may be. And so sometimes it might be a pastor who comes along and says, hey man, I've just been watching your life, and I think that you may be gifted in this way. Have you thought about taking this step of faith? It might be an elder. It might be a life group leader. It might be some other ministry leader, someone who's paying attention, saying, hey, you know what, sister, I don't know if you've recognized this, but we've recognized this in you, and we want to encourage you to take a step of faith. That happens in leadership. Sometimes it's not the leadership. Sometimes it's other brothers and sisters in the body of Christ. You're hanging out in your life group. You're going through the curriculum that we've written, and you've gotten to the part where it says, hey, encourage each other in the gifts that you see in one another's lives, because sometimes it's easier for other people to see our gifts than it is for us to see them. Sometimes it's easier for other people to see our gifts than it is for us to see them. When I think about this principle, I'm always reminded of Acts chapter 2. And you remember on the day of Pentecost, the Spirit fell upon the people of God. There was the sound as of a rushing mighty wind. And then there were divided tongues of fire that sat over each of the disciples. Now, you couldn't see the divided tongues of fire sitting over your own head, but you could see the divided tongues of fire sitting over someone else's head. And sometimes that's what we need. We need that confirmation. We need someone coming alongside of us and saying, hey, I don't know if you've recognized this, but I see God doing a great work in your life in this regard. And that's throughout the book of Acts. I think about Barnabas. You remember he's called the son of encouragement. There was the situation in the church of Syrian Antioch. There were Jewish believers, followers of Christ. There were Gentile believers, followers of Christ. And Barnabas recognized they needed somebody in leadership who could bridge that gap and minister to both those people. And so God stirred his heart to go get Saul of Tarsus, pretty soon to be known as Paul the Apostle. Barnabas goes up and says, hey, listen, I think God has customized you. He's custom fit you for this opportunity. And so Paul comes down and ministers for a year and a half. After that time is up, Acts chapter 13, the people of God, the leaders of the church, are gathered together as they're ministering to the Lord. The Spirit, through a prophet, says, separate to me Saul and Barnabas for the work that I've called them to. And so within the context of the people of God, there's this leading and directing and guiding. There are people coming alongside individuals like Saul and saying, God has this thing for you. And pretty soon what you discover in the book of Acts is it goes from Barnabas and Saul in order to Paul and Barnabas. So Barnabas moves from the leader to the follower because he was humble enough to do that. I want to encourage you to remember that the place of discovering your spiritual gift is the local church.